What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and in my never-ending quest to provide you with the very best Poke data I can possibly find, I came across a really cool article from December of 2020 that was talking about the top 10 most expensive cards that had released that year. And I thought, oh my gosh, how cool is this? Because we are in the exact same spot in the Scarlet and Violet era as we were in the Sword and Shield era at that point, right? Like in December of 2020, we had seen Sword and Shield, Rebel Clash, Vivid Voltage, Darkness Ablaze, and Champion's Path drop. And where are we at right now? We've seen Paradox Rift, we've seen Paldea Evolved, we've seen Obsidian Flames, we've seen Scarlet and Violet Base, and the much anticipated Pokemon 151. So I thought, how cool will it be to see how the 10 most expensive cards from that first year of Sword and Shield, how have they performed over the past? Because I know there's a lot of really cool cards in Scarlet and Violet right now. There's some great chase cards, there's some great trainer cards, just some amazing art in general. So giving us a feel of how another awesome era in Sword and Shield's top 10 from the first year had performed might give us some idea of how these cards will perform. Now the past doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme, and I am always looking for patterns. I am always trying to give us the tools to play chess while everybody else plays checkers. So not only are we going to be looking at the price then versus now, but we're going to be looking at a couple other things. Now I will say the price comparison is going to be PSA 10, and that's because I found some really clean, really good data on PSA 10 prices, but it was harder for me to find some clean button-up raw card prices, and that's okay. PSA 10s and raw card prices usually move in lockstep. The dollar amount isn't the same, but the pattern is usually the same. We're also going to be looking at a raw re-rank. So remember, these were the top 10 cards in these first 5 sets in the Sword and Shield era. So if we were to re-rank them today using raw card prices, would they still be in the top 10 of these 5 sets, or are they going to fall off? We will talk about that throughout this video. The other two things that we're going to talk about, and the last one I think is the most coolest, is we're going to see where they rank in the set now. So for example, the Marnie Full Art Trainer is obviously #1 in Sword and Shield right now. So where did it rank back then? And we're also going to look at the overall Sword and Shield rank for these cards. So taking every single Sword and Shield card that has been launched in the entire Sword and Shield era, putting these cards into it, where do they rank? And I think that is the most important thing for us to understand. Cards that were in the top 10 in 2020, right? Where do they rank now? How did they hold their water over time? And for me, that is really cool. And I promise you, there are some things in this video that surprise the heck out of me, so I hope you can make it all the way to the end. With that being said, if this kind of data-driven approach gets you fired up, hit that subscribe button. We're building a great community. We'd love for you to be a part of it. We do fun stuff like this all the time. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. Questions or comments, drop them down below. Those 3 small things go a long way in helping my small channel out. So let's get into number 10. Right here, the Zamazenta V Gold Secret Rare from Sword and Shield base set. This was the number 10 most expensive card that came out in 2020. A PSA 10 in December of 2020 was going to cost you $225. Now you can pick this one up for 65 bucks in that PSA 10 holder for a loss of 71% over the last 3 years. In a raw card form, if we were to re-rank this, this would come in at number 17 out of all of these sets, and it is the number 6 most expensive card today in Sword and Shield base set. Overall, out of all the Sword and Shield singles that are out there right now in raw form, this one would rank number 124. Think about that. From the top 10 from that first year's Sword and Shield, now that it's fully out there, it would only come in at number 124. Something for us to keep in mind as we're in the beginning of the Scarlet and Violet era. Coming in at number 9 was the Sonia Rainbow Rare. I've talked about the Sonia Full Art Trainer from Rebel Clash. However, back then, Rainbow Rares were the jam. These were the cards everybody was going after. Now, a PSA 10 of this in December of 2020 was going to cost you 140 bucks. Now you can pick it up in the $45 range. Absolutely crazy, because the Rainbow Rares have lost some of their traction and the Full Art Trainers have absolutely gained all the momentum for a loss of 70%. Now, this one is the number 6 most expensive card in Rebel Clash, and if we were to re-rank it from a raw value perspective, it would come in at number 13 out of these 5 sets. Overall, in Sword and Shield, this one cracks the top 100, coming in at number 97. Then we get to number 8 was this Zacian, right? Like we all know Z and Z were the new Pokemon, the big Pokemon in Sword and Shield when it came out, and this card and the other one were big chases in their gold variation. Back then, this one was going to cost you $228 to pick this up in a PSA 10. Now it's going to cost you in the $30 range. I had to go to eBay and actually make sure that was a valid number, and it is, for a loss of 88%. Now, in Sword and Shield, in the raw price, this comes in at number 4, and if we were to re-rank it from a raw price perspective, it would come in at number 14, barely cracking the top 100 at 99 in overall Sword and Shield cards. Coming in at number 7, you saw the Rainbow Rare of Sonia, now we have the Rainbow Rare of Marnie. Back then, it would have cost you $226 in a PSA 10. Now it's going to cost you $80 for a loss of 65%. It is the number 3 most expensive card from a raw perspective in Sword and Shield base. And if we were to re-rank this from a raw card pricing, it would still make the top 10. Very exciting. However, overall, out of all the Sword and Shield singles, it would only come in at number 85. Coming in at number 6, talking about man, Vivid Voltage. Now, Vivid Voltage was the last set to come out before the end of 2020, so some of these prices are inflated. But I will tell you this, there were a lot of card sales for this card in a PSA 10 in the $600, $700, $500 range. It was absolutely crazy. All the way into the beginning of 2021, it was in the $400, $500 range. But in December of 2020, this was going for $620. Now you can pick this up in a PSA 10 case for $55 for a loss of 91%. Absolutely Looney Tunes. Now, Vivid Voltage was printed into the ground, but this one still retains. This is the number 2 most valuable card in the Vivid Voltage set right now. And if we were to re-rank this from a raw card pricing, it would come in at number 14. However, outside of the top 100 for all of the Sword and Shield cards, it's really interesting to see 10 through 6 falling so far down the list overall in Sword and Shield cards, right? Like they're barely cracking the 100 mark, and a couple of them are even out of the top 100. Now, when we get to the number 5 card, things start to change a little bit. We have that full art Marnie, and we know that the Scarlet and Violet era is filled with some awesome trainer cards, some amazing special illustration rares. Iono, Miriam, like there's just some great cards in here. So for me, it was exciting when I looked at this full art Marnie. Then you could buy it for $180 in a PSA 10. Now it's going to cost you $123. Still a loss of 32%, but out of all the cards that we see on this, this is the lowest loss. And that's, I don't know what that's like. It's like being the best loser, I guess. I don't know. But negative 32% is the lowest loss that we see. It is number 1 in Sword and Shield base set. If we were to re-rank this from a raw card pricing, it would come in at number 4. But guess what? Out of all the Sword and Shield cards out there, this one is the number 25 most expensive card from a raw perspective as we sit today. So Marnie has aged as well as any of the other cards we have seen thus far. Now, getting in at number 4, speaking of not aging well, was this Charizard VMAX from Darkness Ablaze, right? Like it was too many of them. I mean, the PSA 10 population is right at 20,000 or over that. It's absolutely crazy. You know, back then in December of 2020, this one would have cost you about $300 to get in a PSA 10 case. Now you can get it for right around $75, resulting in a 75% loss. Now, it is the number 1 most expensive card in Darkness Ablaze. It is a $25 card, so if we did a raw re-rank, it would come in the top 10. It would come in at number 8. Overall, in the Sword and Shield set, the entire era, all of the cards that have been printed, it comes in at number 57. So not a great finish, but somewhat respectable. And when we're thinking about all the Charizards that are available out there right now, think about the fact that this Charizard VMAX, which not a lot of us are big fans of, despite all of the pressure, despite all of the volume, it still ranks almost in the top 50 of all the Sword and Shield cards that have been printed. Coming in at number 3, we have this Charizard VMAX Rainbow Rare from Champion's Path, and this card is absolutely fire. I love this card. Then it was selling before, I gotta say this, there were multiple sales over $1,000. There was a $3,500 sale, $2,000 sale, $1,000, like lots over the $1,000 mark. However, in December of 2020, this was going for $700. Now you can pick it up for $253 for a 64% loss. It is number 2 in Champion's Path. If we were to do a re-rank, it would come in at number 2. And overall in Sword and Shield, it is number 7. It cracks the top 10 for the most valuable cards overall in Sword and Shield in general. That includes Involving Skies and Brilliant Stars and all of the other awesome sets that have come out. This one comes in at number 7 from a raw card price, which is really exciting. Coming in at number 2, another card from Champion's Path. Same path as the other one, right? $700 PSA 10 back then. Now it's at $242. Another loss of right around 75%. It is the number 1 card in Champion's Path. If we were to re-rank all of these, this would come in at number 1. And overall, it is number 6 in Sword and Shield. So it is very interesting to see the Champion's Path specialty set, just like Pokemon 151, the Champion's Path specialty set from the beginning of the era has some really strong singles cards in here. Of course, they're Charizard. They were hard pulls. They're absolute stunner of a card. It's from 2020. It's got some age to it. Yada, yada, yada. But for me, it is very exciting to see these awesome cards retain at least their overall rank in Sword and Shield as a whole. So when we're looking at the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, there is going to be some cards that might not end up number 1 or number 2, but they certainly could finish in the top 10, top 15, top 20 once Scarlet and Violet is all the way done a couple years from now. So exciting to see that some of these cards do have longevity to them. Then, something that didn't have longevity to it was this Pikachu VMAX Rainbow Rare from Vivid Voltage. Yes, it was going for $1,600 in December of 2020. Yes, there were prices where these were selling in the $5,000 range. Absolutely Looney Tunes. Please don't be that person. It is now selling for $208 for a loss of 76%. It is still number 1 in Vivid Voltage, but Vivid Voltage was printed so much that it didn't have a lot of oomph behind it, right? If we were to re-rank all of these, this would come in number 3 behind the last 2 Charizards that we just talked about. And even with all of the pressure, even with all of the shenanigans, it still would rank number 15 overall in Sword and Shield. Out of all of the cards that have been printed, this is, I think it's a $117 card right now, $110 card right now. That still ranks out of all Sword and Shield singles number 15. So I learned a lot throughout this exercise. I have it set in my head that the first 4 sets, really aren't worth investing in and aren't worth spending a ton of money in. Now, from a sealed perspective, we have a lot of opportunity right now to get booster boxes under $100. And the single cards, the top tier single cards, right? We saw pretty much 5 through 1, most expensive cards from 2020. Yeah, there was some loss there. I'm not in a hurry to go out and buy them from the Scarlet and Violet era, but at least we've seen that they've been able to hold their water overall compared to all of the other Sword and Shield set cards. So that is very encouraging for me. I love these types of videos where we can look in the rearview mirror and compare them to what's going on today. And if you enjoy that too, hit that subscribe button. Questions or comments, drop them down below. If you like what you saw, give us a thumbs up. And as always, I appreciate you. Y'all have a great one.